My father looks confused for a moment. He thinks her a reporter come to interview him under false pretenses. I don't understand, he says. But I do, and how is that? The socks, of course, with their Angora cable, frayed slightly at the heel. I see it in her face as well, even though I shouldn't be able to see. I'm too young. I'm only 12. The puffiness. The bluish commas under the eyes. The skin like something wet. Her hand on each chair presses down, and I worry that she'll fall. I've come to thank you, she says to my father. For what? My father asks. And now it's she who seems surprised. For finding the baby, she says, her voice light on the word baby, as if she hardly dared to say it, as if she might not be allowed to say it now. But still my father, who always seems to understand everything, doesn't understand. For finding her, she repeats. He frowns and gives a quick shake of his head. I whisper to him, the mother, and his head shoots back in sudden comprehension. You're the mother? He asks, astonished. Her cheeks pinken, making her eyes look as blue as the fish I once painted in Clara's bedroom. The snow at the windows makes no sound. The woman's hand on the rung of the chair is as white as a pearl. You're the mother of the infant who was left in the snow, he asks. Yes, the woman says, pressing her lips tightly together. I'm going to have to ask you to leave, my father says. I just wanted to say. Save it, he says curtly. She's silent, but she doesn't move. You can't be here, my father says. You left a baby to die in the snow. I need to see the place, she says. What place? Where you found her, she says. My father seems bewildered by her request. You ought to know the place. But how can she know the place where her child was left to die? I want to ask if she didn't take the baby there herself. Wasn't it the detective who said it was a man who put the baby in a sleeping bag? I should never have come, the woman says. I go now. Please, my father says. The woman begins to zip up her jacket. She moves sideways around the furniture. You should leave this area, my father says. They're looking for you. I know, she says. Then what are you doing here? He asks. Will you turn me in? She asks. I don't even know your name. Do you want to know it? She asks, offering herself up to my father, to this stranger, to this man to whom she owes everything. I don't even want to know you exist, my father says. The woman shuts her eyes, and I think that she will fall. I take a step forward and then stop, too young, of course, to be of help. Do you have any idea what you've done? He asks. It wasn't, she begins. I'm certain she was about to say, it wasn't me, and apparently my father thinks so, too. You were there, weren't you? He asks. Yes, she says. Don't say another word. My father says as he turns to me. Nikki, leave the room. Dad, I say. The woman's knees go first, and she seems about to squat. She thrusts her arms forward, but she takes the corner of the table with her chin. I have never seen a real person faint. It's not like in the movies or in books. It's ugly, and it's frightening. My father kneels beside the woman, and he lifts her heel off the floor. She comes to almost immediately and seems not to know where she is. "Nicky, get me a glass of water," my father says. Reluctantly, I leave the room. My hands are trembling as I turn the faucet on. I fill the glass nearly to the brim, and it spills a bit as I run with it to the den. When I get there, the woman is sitting up. "What happened?" she asks. "You fainted," my father says. "Here, drink this." He hands her the glass of water. "Can you make it to the car? We have to get you to the hospital." Her hand is so fast I barely see it. It snakes around and clutches my father's wrist. "I can't," she says, looking at him. "I won't." Her face is pale, almost green. "I'm leaving," she says, letting go of my father's wrist. "I shouldn't have come. I'm sorry." She makes an effort to stand. Beads of sweat have popped onto her forehead. "Sit down," my father says, and after a second's hesitation, she does. "When did you last eat?" "If you take me to the hospital," she says, "they'll arrest me." A simple truth. They will. The woman bends over and vomits onto her jeans. My father puts a hand on her back. I can hardly believe what I am seeing. The fighting, the vomiting, it's all wrong in our house. "Nicky," my father says, "get me a wet paper towel and a pot." In the kitchen, I rip a vat of paper towel from the holder and wet in. I find a saucepan in a cabinet. When I return, I hand the woman the paper towels so that she can clean herself up. I'm shaking as I set the pot on the floor. The woman wipes her jeans. She leans against the leg of the table. "I need a bathroom," she says. With effort, she makes it to her feet. She begins to sway. My father reaches for her arm and catches her. "Steady now," he says. Together, my father and the woman move to the back hallway where the bathroom is. I watch as she detaches herself, enters the bathroom, and closes the door. Agitated, my father runs his hands through his hair. "This is a disaster," he says. "You can't take her to the hospital," I say. "She needs medical help." Maybe she hasn't eaten. Maybe she's just tired. She can't stay here. But Dad. My father and I stand between the kitchen and the bathroom, near enough to hear the woman if she calls out, but not so close that we can listen to whatever is going on behind the door. My father puts his hands in his pockets and jiggles the change there. Each of us is silent then, absorbing the fact of the woman who has entered our house, who has, however bravely, entered our lives. My father walks to the back door, opens it, gazes out at the snow, and shuts the door. He crosses his arms in front of his chest again. "Christ," he says. I climb the stairs and head for my room. On a shelf in my closet, behind a duffel bag, I found a pair of pajamas my grandmother made for me. I hate them and wanted to throw them out, but my father insisted that I keep them to wear when my grandmother comes to visit. They have childish pink and blue bears on them and a big elastic waist. When I return, my father is in the kitchen. He has lit a cigarette. The smoke rises and makes a quick left turn in a draft from the window. We hover, my father with his cigarette and I with my flannel bundle, as if waiting to be called upon to save the young woman in the bathroom. First the infant and now the mother. The door opens and the woman's head pokes through. She looks at my father and then at me. "Can I speak to you?" she asks. I point to myself, a question on my face. "Yes, please," she says. I walk to the door. "Do you have a Kotex?" she whispers. A Kotex, I am thinking. Oh God, a cortex. No, I say, chagrined. None. She seems surprised. No. She tilts her head. How old are you? 12. I have a pad that the school nurse gave each of the 7th grade girls at the beginning of the school year just in case, but it's in my locker. I'm sorry, I say, and I truly am. I'm more than sorry. I'm mortified. The woman looks out the window at the falling snow. It's bad out there, isn't it? I offer up the flannel pajamas. What's this? She asks. Pajamas, I say. They're too big for me. The waist is elastic. Her arms slide through the gap, and I see that her legs are naked. She glances out the window again. Maybe there's something, she adds as she shuts the door. I return to the kitchen and lean against the red counter. How am I ever going to manage this? I wonder. I close my eyes and think a minute. Dad, I say finally, I need to go to Remy's. My tone is slightly defiant, anticipating an argument. Remy's, my father says, stabbing out his cigarette in a saucer he keeps for the purpose. I have to get something. What? I shrug. Something for you or something for her? He asks. Something for her, I say. What is it? Something for her, I repeat. My father gets up and walks to the window again. He examines the snow, gauging depth and speed. The tracks of his truck and the blue car are nearly covered now. It's important, I add. There's nothing else that will do? He asks. No, I say. You're sure? He says. Yes, there might be a cloth or a towel that would do, but I have never before been given such a mission, and I am determined not to fail this woman. Please, Dad, I say. I'll go, he says. You stay here. But as he says this, I can see him reconsidering. He doesn't want me in the house alone with the woman. Never mind, he says. You'll come with me. We dress in silence for the snow. I tap on the door and tell the woman we're going to the store and that we'll be right back. We climb into the truck and my father starts the engine. He steps out and scrapes the snow from the windshield and the windows. I tell myself it isn't so bad out, but it is. The snow is falling fast and thick. Our road, unplowed, is slippery beneath the wheels of the truck. My father drives with concentration and we don't speak. I wonder if he's thinking the same thing I am, that we just left a strange woman in our house, a woman who may have tried to murder her baby. Murder her baby. I cannot make the phrase sit still in my head. Since we moved to New Hampshire, nothing ever happens to my father and me. Hardly anyone ever drives up the long hill. But in the past 9 days, we'd had 3 sets of visitors. Detective Warren, Steve and Virginia, and now a woman whose name we still do not know. We pass the school and the church and the village green. At the corner of Strople and Mine, the rear wheels of the truck begin to float across the street. My father takes his hands off the steering wheel, and after what feels like many seconds, we come to a stop. My father puts the truck in gear and pulls into our lane. I'm praying that we don't hit something, because if we do, it will be all my fault. Up ahead I can see both Remy's and Switzer's, but my father makes a sudden turn into the post office. I guess he wants to check his mail. Instead of stopping at the post office, however, he pulls behind that building to another building that houses both the police station and the town clerk's office. What are you doing? I ask, my eyes widening. My father doesn't answer me. He parks the truck, turns the engine off, and opens his door. Dad, I ask. I watch my father walk toward the police station. I open my door and hop out. Did he intend to come here all along? Did he agree to go to the store simply to get me out of the house while the police arrest the mother of the baby? Would my father do that? I'm not sure. Sometimes I think I know my father very well. At other times I wonder if I know him at well. Dad, I yell, running after him. My father stops at the door and waits for me to catch up to him. He bends toward me. In a quiet voice that I know means business, he says, "Go back to the truck." What are you doing? This has nothing to do with you. But you can't, I say, holding my hands out. You just can't. Already I feel a sense of loyalty to a woman I don't even know. I shake my head vigorously back and forth. My father feels a nudge at his back. He steps aside so that the door can open. Peggy, the town clerk, pulls a scarf around her head. "Hi, Nicky," she says, stepping outside. I first met Peggy when I applied for a permit to sell raspberries at the end of our road. She charged me $7. Peggy smiles at my father. "You need me?" she asks. "Actually, I'm looking for Chief Boyd," my father says. "You just missed him," she says. "He and Paul got called out to 89. An accident at the exit." Peggy looks at the sky. "It is urgent. I could raise him on the radio." I stare at my father. "No," he says after a few seconds. "No, that's all right. I'll give him a call." I let out a long breath. "Well, you've certainly been in the news," Peggy says, pulling on her gloves. "What a thing that must have been," she says, "to find a baby." She looks at me. "And you were with him, too." I nod. "I'm off to Switzer's," Peggy says. "Have to get some batteries and road salt before the storm gets worse. You want to wait inside?" I won't lock the door. "No, we're fine," my father says. "Thanks. If I don't see you later, have a good Christmas," Peggy says. My father and I walk to the truck. I climb into the cab. I know enough not to ask a single question, not to say a word. At Remis, my father slows to the curb. Through the whiteout and the steamed window, I can see the pale yellow light of a bulb above the register. My father hands me a $10 bill. "Make it snappy," he says. The steps are poorly shoveled. A bell rings when I enter the store, needlessly announcing me. Marion sets her knitting down. "Nicky," she says, "sweetheart, you're my hero. You know that? Haven't seen you since you found the baby. Haven't seen your dad either." "We've been kind of busy," I say. "Well, I guess so." Marion, a large redhead with a rubbery face, married her sister's husband after an affair of biblical proportions that shocked even the most ardent proponents of New Hampshire's highly unrealistic state motto, "Live free or die." But that was years ago, and now the woman is a pillar of the community. Her husband, Jimmy, who was once two regional star quarterback, weighs in at over 300 pounds. One of Marion's sons is at UNH, the other is at the state prison for armed robbery. I have hardly ever seen Marion without knitting needles in her hands. Today she's making something in red and yellow stripes. I hope it's not for anyone over 2 years old, so tell me all about it, she says. I say, thinking, something that wasn't in the papers. I think another moment. We've wrapped her in flannel shirts and put her in a plastic laundry basket. You did? Marion says, seemingly happy with the detail. Were you just completely freaked out? Pretty much, I say. Marion picks up her knitting. You went to the hospital too? I did. Did you get to stay with the baby? We visited for a minute. What's going to happen to her? We don't really know, I say. Marion loses her rubber smile. It's sad, she says. Well, we did find her. I say, not yet willing to relinquish the role of heroine. No, I mean sad for the person who did it, she says. There must have been a terrible reason. I think about how the person who did it is in our bathroom and at home right this minute. You finish the hat for your dad? Yes, I say, inching closer to the aces. How did it came out? Pretty good, I say. I think it'll fit him. You ended up liking the rolled edge. I did, I say. My mother taught me how to knit when I was 7. I forgot about knitting until one day I saw Marion at the counter with hers and confessed that I knew how. Confessed in the right word. In those days, in the early 1980s, knitting was not a hobby a preteen would readily admit to. But Marion, ever enthusiastic, pounced upon me and insisted that I show her something I'd made. I did. A misshapen scarf, which she praised extravagantly. She lent me a raspberry-colored wool for another project, a hat for myself. Since then I've been knitting pretty continuously. It's addictive and is soothing. And for a few minutes anyway, it makes me feel closer to my mother. When I run into trouble with a particular stitch or a pattern, I go down to the store and Marion helps me sort it out. Usually I am fascinated by whatever Marion is knitting. By the way, a ball of string can become a sweater or a baby blanket. But today I just want to get away from the counter as fast as I can. I think of my father waiting in the car, about the way the snow must be covering the windshield already. I know where the feminine products are kept, and I move in that direction. The box of Kotex seems larger than I imagined it would be. I take it down from the shelf and return to the counter. Marion sets her knitting on her lap. Oh my, she says, looking at the Kotex. Foolishly, recklessly, I blurt, it's not for me. Marion tilts her head and smiles a maternal smile. It's clear she doesn't believe me. I take the $10 bill from my pocket. The Kotex pulses and sings a tune of the scuffed formica. Marion punches prices into the register. You feeling okay? She asks. I'm just fine, I say. You know, if you have any questions about anything at all, you can always ask me. I nod, my face is hot. You're not having, your mother around, she says lightly. I bite my lip, I just want to leave. Not too many people in today, Marion says, but yesterday you should have seen the rush for meat and canned goods. Stocking up, it's supposed to be a big storm. Biggest of the season, they're saying, but there's always wrong. I pat the money on the counter. Have you seen the baby since that night? Marion asks, making my change. No. Marion looks up quickly and behind me there's a voice. Nikki, isn't it? A blue overcoat and a red muffler slide beside me. I didn't hear the bell announcing Detective Warren's arrival. Well, maybe there wasn't a bell, I realize. Maybe he was already in the store in another easel. How are you? He asks. Fine. I say through tight lips. Marion slips the cortex into a paper bag, but not before Warren has surely seen my purchase. Sweet blossoms inside my parka. I stand as though I am not really there, head slightly bent, back hunched. Warren pats his magazines and a package of gum on the counter. I'm going now, I say. Camels, Warren says. Have a good Christmas. Marion calls to me, and tell your dad I think he's a hero, too. Yes, you and your dad have a good holiday, Warren says. I walk as fast as I dare to the door. All I can think about is what will happen if my father sees the detective. The bell rings as I open it. I slip and skid off the top step and take the rest on my butt. I pick myself up and run to the truck. I slam the door and threw my head back against the seat. The snow in the paper bag. Let's go quick, I say. I have to pee. The ride back to the house is tense and long. At times my father has trouble finding the road. Again and again I feel the sway of the rear tires skidding out or jumping a rut. We see only a couple of other vehicles on the roads, few willing, it seems, to venture out in the storm. We pass the small white cottage with its evidence of boys, or up the consideration from the truck window and strain to see inside. The house has candles in the windows. I can see a lit tree in the living room. The mother is in the kitchen near a counter. She has her hair pulled back into a ponytail. Fragments of Christmas memories float across my vision. She puts the baby ornament on the tree. The ribbon on the package is bright red, cut with a rib from the scissors. He is on his knees, his head beneath the branches, looking for the socket. I'm thinking about Christmas trees and ornaments when I have a sudden realization. Did I really tell Marion the cortex wasn't for me? Did the detective lurking in the aceless hear that? Stupid, stupid, stupid. My father parks in his usual spot at the far side of the barn. I look at the woman's blue car as I open the door and head for the house. I found her sitting on the bench in the back hallway. She has on her white shirt and the bottoms of my flannel pajamas. They barely fit, the ties tied with pink and blue animals, the cuffs just inches below her knees. Her legs are white to the tops of her grey Angora socks. Her jeans, which she has washed, hang on a hook, drying. She looks chestant and subdued, a student waiting outside the principal's office. I hand her a paper bag. She says thank you and slips inside the bathroom. I take off my jacket and hang it on a hook not far from the one that holds her jeans. Beyond the bathroom door, I hear a rip of cardboard, the rustle of paper. The woman has had a baby. What does it feel like? I want to ask. I know where babies come from, but that doesn't tell me what I crave to understand. Does it hurt? Was she frightened? Does she love the man who is the father? Is he waiting out of sight down the road for her to return? Is the ridiculously named baby Doris the result of a grand passion? Does the woman behind the bathroom door cry for her lover and her lost child? The woman emerges from the bathroom looking more careworn than passionate. We stand for a moment in the back hallway, and I'm not sure what to do with her. Thank you, she says again. Was it bad out? It was fine. My father brings a wave of cold air with him as he stamps the snow off his boots. He slips his sleeves from his jacket and passes it on a hook. You should lie down, he says to the woman. I lead her past the kitchen and into the den. I point to the couch. She falls onto the sofa in a kind of loose collapse. Her stomach swells over the elastic band of the pajamas, visible where the white shirt parts at the waist. The shirt isn't clean. Rings of dust, like fine stitching, run along the inside edge of the cuffs. She lies with her eyes closed, and I examine her dispraise. Her lips are dry, and she wears no makeup, a minor disappointment. Her eyebrows have been expertly plucked, however, suggesting prior care and grooming. Her eyelashes are thick and blonde. There are black heads on her nose and one of two faint depressions on her cheeks. Her hair falls over the face, and I think she must have fallen asleep already not to mind its touch on her skin. Her breasts are large and leans toward the couch cushion. I wait, as one might beside a mother's bed, for her to wake up or to open her eyes. In the kitchen, I can hear the electric whine of a can opener, the scrape of a saucepan against a burner. I cover her with an ugly black and red crocheted blanket my grandmother made and which my father refuses to throw out. I plump the pillows behind her head, hoping this will rouse her, and it does. She sits up quickly, once again as if not knowing where she is. The beauty in the fairy tale who has slept 1,000 years. I've left him, the woman says. I sit up straighter. Left him? The man? The one who took the baby into the snow? She shivers. You're cold, I say. You'll get your jacket. My sweatshirt in the bathroom. I am up in an instant, eager to be of use. I found the folded pink cardigan on a corner of the sink. It's made of a fleecy wool, not angora but mohair, and has large mother-of-pearl buttons down the front. When I return, the woman lifts herself up. I wrap the cardigan around her shoulders, trying to tuck it down. She seems to have lost the use of her arms, and her body is heavy. I sit on the floor next to her. The room is filled with bookcases that tower over us. Besides the couch, there are only the two lamps, a coffee table, the leather club chair my father saved from our New York house, and one other chair. My father comes in with a tray, chicken with studs in a bowl, a fan of sardines hastily arranged on a plate, a glass of water. You're dehydrated, he says, studying her. She brings herself up to a sitting position. Her hand is shaky as she holds the spoon. As soon as the storm stops, he says, gesturing toward the window, as soon as the storm stops, what? I'd like to know. Wrestle the woman to the track. Make her drive her blue car down an unplowed road? My father sits and assumes his usual position, head bent, legs spread, his elbows on his knees. The room darkens and my father reaches over to turn on the lamp. How did you find me? He asks. I read about you in the newspaper, she says. Your name was there. It was easy enough to find out where you live. Beyond the windows the snow falls in fat flakes. Have you seen a doctor? He asks. She looks up. While you were pregnant? He adds. No. You never saw a doctor? No, she says again. That was foolish, my father says. She opens her mouth to speak, but he holds up his hand, cutting her off. I don't want to know, he says, standing. Nikki, I want you to start shoveling. Now? I ask. Yes, now, he says. I have to go over to the barn and finish that burrow. But, no buts. If we don't keep up with the storm, we'll never get out of here. I stand reluctantly with a parting glance at the woman on the couch. She doesn't look up at me. I drag myself to the back hallway, sit on the bench, and pat on my boots. What if she needs me, I think. I put on my jacket and hat and mittens. Should she be left alone? I go outside and bend my head against the snow. What if something happens to her and I'm not there? I use a white shovel and push it forward like a plow. Of all my chores, I hate shoveling the most, particularly when it's snowing and it's clear that in a couple of hours I'll have to do it all over again. I make rows, pushing the snow to the far edge of the top of the driveway. I'm impatient and I do this in record time. After 20 minutes, I survey my work. It's sleepy, but I can't bear to be outside a minute longer. I lean the shovel by the door, step inside, and undress quickly. I walk to the den. The woman is still sitting on the couch with the tray on her lap. She has left the stars to float in an oily golden puddle at the bottom of the bowl. I always eat the stars first. She leans over to set the tray aside, but I take it from her. Clara Barton, Florence Nightingale. Again she lies down. The light from the lamp falls on her hair and her face. I sit once again on the floor and lay my arm against the peeping on the cushions. What's your name? I ask. Your father doesn't want to know, she says. You're not supposed to be in here. I won't tell him, I say. She says nothing. We have to call you something, I point out. The woman thinks a minute, 2 minutes. You can call me Charlotte, she says finally. Charlotte? I ask. She nods. Charlotte, I repeat silently. I don't know any Charlottes. Have ever known a Charlotte? It's a pretty name, I say. It is your real name? It is, she says. I want to know so much then. How old is she? Where is she from? Who is the man? Did she laugh with him very much? The baby's doing fine, I say instead. Sobs, a gulp, a second gulp, escape her. Her eyes scrunch up and snot runs down her upper lip. She is not a delicate crier. She wipes her nose with a pink sleeve. I run to the bathroom and come back with a vat of toilet paper. I'm sorry, I say. I shouldn't have said anything. She waves me apology away. Tell me about it, I plead. I can't, she says, blowing her nose. Not now. But the now is everything, isn't it? Now implies a future, a time when she will confide in me and tell me her tale. If only I can wait, if only I can be patient. I am dizzy with the promise of the word. I think I really need to sleep, she says, giving her nose a final tidying. We have a guest room, I say, for my grandmother. She's coming for Christmas. You can close the door and sleep there. Your father won't mind? No, I say with no authority whatsoever. She rises up from the couch, sloughing off the sweater and the crew. I lead her to the back stairs. She walks haltingly and uses the banister to pull herself up. She follows me to a room with a double bed covered with a white spread that used to be on my parents' bed years ago. I take a quilt from the closet and lay it as best I can over the coverlet. Beside the bed is a small table with a lamp on it, and to its right a bureau with a mirror. In another corner is a rocking chair, and beside that an especially bright lamp that my father set up so that my grandmother can sit and read when she visits. The woman moves directly to the bed, draws back the covers, and lies down at once. I'll come back in a while and see if you are all right, I say. The woman's eyes are closed, and she seems already to have fallen asleep. Reluctantly, I turn and leave. I shut the door with exaggerated care. I sit on the bottom step for the time it would take to give the area nearest to the house a really good showering, and then I walk over to the barn. I've put her in the guest room, I say. My father stands back from the table, so. I don't want you talking to her, he says, lowering his safety goggles. I thought I made that clear. I shrug. As soon as this lets up, I'm going to insist that she leave. You can't be part of this, Nikki. You mean you can't be part of this? No, I mean you, he says, pointing a finger. This is serious business, and you're not to say a word to anyone. Not now, not ever. Do you understand? I turn and leave my father's shop before he can get going on a lecture. I fetch the tray from the den, take it into the kitchen, and wash the dishes. I finish off the soup, spooning indirectly from the saucepan. I climb the stairs and stand outside the guest room, listening for a telltale sound, and a sound with which to weave a story. Disappointed, I walk into my room and sit at my desk and try to work on the beaded necklace for my grandmother. A complicated and ambitious project with a sculpted pendant, but I am jumpy and can't make my fingers do what I want them to do. From time to time I move to the window and look out at the snow and am comforted by the without and the wind that has come out, signalizing a blizzard. Clothes might be a problem, I'm thinking, but he can wear my father's shirts. Her jeans will dry soon enough. Fitful, I lie on my bed and stare up at the ceiling and imagine a week during which Charlotte will stay with us. I see the two of us sitting in various cozy positions, my father conveniently gone, while she tells me her fabulous and lurid tale. I sit up, I have an idea. I collect the hair dryer from the upstairs bathroom and take it downstairs. I leave the jeans from the hook in the back hallway. I hang them instead on the hook on the back of the bathroom door. The jeans are well all along the inner thighs. I hold out the legs and aim the dryer the way I've had to do with t-shirts, the ones that come back from the laundromat, slightly damp because of my father's impatience to get going. The heavy denim takes longer to dry than I think it should, and I hope I'm not waking Charlotte with the sound. I don't want her to catch me doing this. I simply want her to find her clothes warm and nicely folded. When I turn off the hairdryer, I hear knocking at the back door. Another customer? Impossible, I think. We barely got up the road ourselves. I step out of the bathroom and see a flash of red in the window of the door. I freeze in place like a statue in a child's game. I suck in my breath. I have no choice but to walk forward and open the door. Nikki, Warren says, stepping inside. There's a staccato of stamped feet, snow falling to the floor. Your father around? He asks. A silent screech rings in my ear. No, I say. I just had one or two questions for him. Warren says, beginning to melt on the welcome mat. I wanted to get over her before the storm does its worst. For a moment I can speak. Where is he? Warren asks, studying me. He had to go into the woods to find his axe. I say. He left it in the woods. He wanted to find it before it gets buried in the snow. I feel dizzy. The light is huge, magnificent. Really, Warren says. He opens his coat and shakes it out, a winged. From the back hallway through the kitchen, I have a view of the den, the couch, and the ugly red and black crocheted throw. "Look out there," Warren says. A pink mohair sweater with mother-of-pearl buttons is lying against the pillows. It is spread open as if a woman had just risen from it. Warren whips his feet a dozen times on the mat. "Could I get a glass of water?" he asks, looking over at the coats on the hooks. Sure," I say. He walks with me to the kitchen. He glances up the stairs as he goes. "I've got snow tires, but even so," he says. In the kitchen, he studies the dishes in the dish drainer. I fetch a glass from the cabinet, fill it from the tap, and hand it to him. I can smell spearmint on his breath. I try not to look at his scar. "We found a flashlight," he says. "Wanted to know if it was your father's or if it belonged to the guy." "It's probably my father's," I say quickly. "We lost one in the snow that night." "Thought it might be," Warren says, looking over my head toward the den. "You put your tree up yet?" "We'll do it Christmas Eve," I say. Warren takes a long swallow. "How old are you again?" he asks. 12, I say. I hear the back door open. "Dead," I say, looking just past the detective. "I am dead." "What's going on?" my father asks. The vertical lines on his forehead are pronounced. "Come to see if you lost a flashlight the night you found the baby," Warren says. "You find your axe." My father says nothing. "Remember, Dad, how you said you were going into the woods to find your axe?" I say, meeting his eyes. "We found a flashlight," Warren says. "Nicky said you lost one that night." "I did." "What brand?" "Don't know, black with a yellow switch." "Yeah, the same," Warren says. I let a hand fall to just below my waist. I shut my eyes and wince slightly, the way I've seen the girls at school do, as if waiting for a crumb to pass. "So you guys getting ready for Christmas?" My father unzips his jacket. "We go our tree up already," Warren says, taking a sip of water. "One of my boys, the 8-year-old, he's autistic, likes having it up." My father nods. "There's a specialist in Concord," Warren says. "Supposed to be the best in New Hampshire. It's why we moved into the city." I hear a slight creak along the upstairs hallway. I glance at Warren to see if he has heard it too. From a hook I snatch a rag and begin to skate with that cloth, drying the floor, the way my father is always trying to get me to do. "Still, though," Warren is saying, "hard on my life, hard on Mary. Tommy, that's my son. He doesn't like being touched." A murmur from my father, a pause and then another string of words. I skate my way to the bottoms of the stairs and glance up. Charlotte, her face creased with sleep, is on the upstairs landing. "We've got a clan coming." Warren is saying, "We'll have 19, 20 anyway, for Christmas Eve." With a quick glance to see what Warren isn't looking, I shake my head once, an emphatic no. Mary and her sister will do up 300 pierogies. Warren is saying, "My wife's Polish." I pick up the rag and reach forward to wipe a step. Silently, I beg Charlotte to understand. Her head tilts then, and I see the way her eyes begin to listen the moment that she registers and foreign voice. She holds her arms out like a ballerina, and I think for a moment she might fly off the top step. Pirouetting on her toes, she retreats from the landing. Very carefully, I step away from the stairs. I let out a long breath. Through the window I can see that the snow has turned icy. It pings against the glass. "I'll bring you some," Warren is saying. He sets the water glass on a shelf, looking bad out there. "Better get yourself another flashlight." "Plenty where that come from," my father says. "You could lose your power in this," Warren says. "We could." The detective glances my way and he pushes open the door against an inch of snow. One gives a small wave and bends into the storm, holding his overcoat close with one hand. He trudges collar up across the drive. He wipes the snow off his windshield with his gloves and climbs into his Jeep. As he does, he glances at the muffled maze of tracks in the snow. The truck and the blue car cannot be seen from where he is standing. He would have to walk farther toward the woods to get the right angle. He does not. I watch him reverse, make the turn, and finally leave. My father shuts the door. "What else do you think you're doing?" he says to me. I stare at the floor. "You're going to get us in more trouble than we're in already." I look up. "I was just trying to get rid of him," I say. "This is true and not entirely true." "She came to the top of the stairs," I add. "I know she did. I heard." "You heard?" "Yes." "Do you think he heard?" "I don't know," my father says, "but I hope for your sake he didn't." My father closes his jacket with an angry zip. "I'll be in the barn," he says. The day we left New York, my father packed up a trailer with boxes and clothes and suitcases, bicycles and skis and books. He tied a blue plastic tarp over all of it, bent his head to the plastic, and stood for so long I wondered if he'd fallen asleep. At that morning I'd been expected to help with the packing. The movers would come to get the larger items after we left. My father had put me in the kitchen with a stack of old newspapers and a dozen fresh cardboard boxes and had asked me to see to the dishes. But I was lost in the fatigue of anger and inertia. I didn't want to be packing up to leave. I would lift an item up and look at it and set it down, and then pick it up again and think, how am I supposed to pack a pressure cooker? What do I do with a Cuisinart? My legs hurt, my arms hurt, my head hurt from crying. This is the last time I'll ever see my hallway at night. I'd been saying to myself for the last 24 hours, this is the last time I'll ever sit on my swing. This is the last time I'll ever reach for the Cheerios in this particular cabinet. Living was a weight upon the entire house and its contents, so that it seemed a Herculean task simply to lift a glass. I packed indifferently tumblers and plates in the same box, more plates in another box, and I forgot to label the cartons. For months after we moved into the new house, we had to unpack 6 or 7 boxes to find the toaster, or the measuring cups or the wooden spoons. I wouldn't go when my father said it was time to get into the car. He let me be for an hour as he checked and rechecked rooms and closets, looking into cabinets and under beds. In the end, he had to take me bodily from the only home I'd ever known, the one that still had surfaces my mother and Clara had touched. I stopped all the way to the Massachusetts Turnpike. The drive from New York to New Hampshire can be done in 3 hours, but it seemed to take far longer than that to reach our destination. My father drove up Route 91, the highway that runs between New Hampshire and Vermont, not even knowing which state we'd eventually settle in. Exhausted, he stopped in White River Junction, where we ordered a late-night supper neither of us could eat. We asked directions to the nearest motel, where I fell onto my bed fully clothed, meaning to get up and brush my teeth and undress, but I never did. I woke the next morning disoriented and dirty. I felt as though I slipped through a hole in time, caught between life as it had been and life as it would be. I had no enthusiasm for the future, and I knew my father didn't either. In the morning I whined all through the blueberry pancakes, and my father left the dinner in disgust. When I finally got into the car, he tried to find his way out of White River Junction in order to continue north. I remember a series of bewildering interchanges, and it was a minute or two before my father realized we were actually heading south on Route 89. "We'll see where this goes," he said, shrugging. The highway ascended slowly into small mountains with ledges of startling white rock. Waterfalls have frozen blue, and there were still patches of snow on the north sides of the trees and houses. We hadn't gone far, only half an hour, when my father veered off the highway and an exit. Perhaps he realized that if he didn't go off soon, we'd be back in Massachusetts, or maybe he simply needed gas. I can't remember now. We glided off the exit ramp onto Route 10, drove for a mile or two through a small town, and coasted to a stop in front of Croydon Realty. I was an uncooperative ball in the passenger seat, my arms crossed over my bulky parka, my chin tucked into the collar. I refused even to look at my father. "Nicky," he said gently. "What?" "We've got to do our best here," he said. "Do our best what?" I asked. "Do our best to try to make a go of it," he said. "I don't want to make a go of it," I said. He sighed, and I could hear him tapping his fingers against the steering wheel. He waited. "I know how hard this must be for you," he said finally. "You have no idea," I said, curling myself into an even tighter ball. "I think I might," he said, his voice deliberately quiet, deliberately calm. Mine was not. "This is so unfair," I shouted. "Yes, it is," he said. "But why?" I wailed. "There isn't any why, Nicky." "Yes, there is," I said. "We didn't have to leave. We could have stayed at home." "No, Nicky, we couldn't." "You mean you couldn't?" "That's right. I couldn't." I began to cry and to shake with the crying. It seemed my natural state then. My father put a hand on my shoulder. I was exhausting both of us. "I'm sorry, Nicky," he said. I flung his hand off with a twist. I sat up and looked around. "Where are they?" I cried in a sudden panic. A woman stepped out the door of Croydon Realty. She wore a scarf around her neck. She had an ankle boots with fur on them. "Where are who?" my father asked. "You know who," I said. "Mom and Clara. Where are they?" "Oh, Nicky," my father said, hopelessly defeated. He shut his eyes and leaned his head back against the headrest. "I hate you," I screamed. I opened my door and stepped out onto the road between the car and the curb. In my fury, I'd forgotten that I'd taken my boots off in the car, as I almost always do, to keep my feet from overheating. I stood in a pile of slush in my stocking feet. The woman on the steps of Croydon Realty paused. My father bent his forehead to the steering wheel. The woman looked at me, and then into the car at my father. She glanced at the trailer with the tarp. She sized us up as a sail. She went back into the office. My ankles ached from the icy water. I hopped back into the car and slammed the door as hard as I could. My father opened his door and stepped out. He adjusted his grey tweed overcoat, the last time he would ever wear it, jumped a puddle, and headed for the realtors. And such was our introduction to Shepherd, New Hampshire. I climbed the stairs to the guest room. I knock and call Charlotte's name. I hear no answer and call her name again. I open the door a crack. The shadows are drawn, and it takes a minute for my eyes to adjust to the gloom. When they do, I see that she is sitting in my grandmother's chair. She has her hands folded in her lap, and her posture is rigid. Charlotte, you want me to some downstairs, she says evenly. No, I say, no, and I understand that she's been waiting in the silly pajama bottoms to be called downstairs and sent away, possibly even arrested. No, I say again, it's just me, Nikki. I brought you your jeans. And this, I say, holding out the pink sweater. Everything's all right? She asks. Everything's fine, I say, and even in the gloom of the room I can see her shoulder relax. Who was it, then? She asks. A detective. His name is Warren. He's the one trying to find you. Oh, God, I thought so, she says. How did he know I was here? I don't think he did, I say. He came to tell my dad that they'd found a flashlight. I stop, fearing another collapse. You know, I say quickly. Your dad didn't tell him I was here? No. Oh, God, she says again, but I hear relief and not panic in her voice this time. It's okay, I say. He left. He won't be coming back. Not in this weather. I've made you an accomplice, Charlotte says. Accomplice, I repeat silently. I love the word. She runs her hand over the pink sweater in her lap. You want something to eat? I ask. Not right now. I should let you sleep, I say. Don't go, she says. She rises from the chair and sets the jeans and sweater on the cushion. She makes her way to the bed, draws back the covers, and climbs in. It seems such an ordinary gesture in such an ordinary room that I have to remind myself of the awfulness of her crime. Uncertain as to what I should do, I sit on the floor next to the bed, my legs folded beneath me. Do you know anything about the baby? She asks. I'm surprised by the bravery of the question, but I'm afraid to answer it in case she begins again to cry. In the dusk of the bedroom, I can barely see her face. She lies like a child, with her hands tucked under her cheek. I think I can smell her, a warm, yeasty smell, not unsweet. I take a deep breath and speak rapidly. She's going to be fine, I say. Really fine. But she's lost one finger. Her toes and everything else are good, though. I don't know which finger. Oh, Charlotte says. It's a small O, not a wail, but a sound that sinks away into the corners. She's being cared for by a foster family, I say. I speak carefully now. Each word a potentially treacherous step, likely to unleash an avalanche of tears. Where? Charlotte asks. We don't know, I say. I don't think they plan on telling us. They're calling her baby Doris. Doris, he says, clearly surprised. We don't know why, I say. It might be a system they have, you know, like naming hurricanes. Doris, she says again, and I can hear a note of indignation in her voice. She sits up a bit. That won't be her name, you know, later, I say. Someone will change it, she says. Probably. Charlotte's head falls back against the pillow. It's an awful name, she says. You could get her back, I say quickly. I'm sure you could get her back. She doesn't speak. Don't you want her back? I ask. I can take care of her, Charlotte says. Her voice is curiously flat, devoid of emotion. I have nowhere to live, she adds. Nowhere at all? I ask. She rolls onto her back and stares at the ceiling. My eyes have adjusted to the dark and I can see her profile. The slightly jutting chin, the lips pressed together, the open eyes, the fabulously long lashes, the smooth forehead. No, she says. You must have lived somewhere, I say. Well, of course I did, she says. I just can't go back. I want to ask why, but I tell myself to be careful, to be patient the same way my dad has to be patient when starting up his truck. How old are you? I ask instead. 19, she says, rolling back toward me. So it's just you and your father? Yes. What happened to your mom? She died, I say. Charlotte reaches out a hand and touches my shoulder. I'm so sorry, she says. Her fingers linger a moment longer, and then she draws them back into the covers. How old were you? I was 10, I say. You've had a rough time, haven't you? I had a sister, too, I say. Her name was Clara. She was a year old. She died with my mom in the car accident. I expect the hand on the shoulder again, but it stays where it is inside the covers. What did she look like? Charlotte asks. Clara? Your mom? What did she look like? She was pretty, I say. Not too tall, but thin. She had long light brown hair that was wavy. She cut it after Clara was born, but I remember her best with it long. Like you? Charlotte says. You'll show me a picture? Yes, I say, I will. And already I'm thinking about the album I have in my room and how Charlotte and I will pore over it. I wish I had a picture, she says. You know, just one picture. Her wish hits me like a basketball flung at my chest. I realize she probably has no idea what her baby looks like. Was the picture taken in the hospital? Do the police have one on file? Where did you used to live? I ask. I can't, she says. I won't tell anyone. Not even my father. Let's just say it's a small town north of here, she says, in New Hampshire. Maybe, she says. Your dad seems like a nice man. He doesn't want me here, and he's angry, but still he has a nice face. What grade are you in? 7th, I say. Do you like school? I shift my legs. Sort of, I say. The truth is that I do like school, but I don't want to seem too eager in case she thinks anyone who likes school pathetic. It already matters tremendously that Charlotte thinks of me. I was in school, she says. You were? I cannot imagine Charlotte behind a desk of reading a book. In college, she says, but I dropped out. She pauses. I plan to go back, though. I have the sense that her entire story, the story I long to hear, is contained within that pause. Do you have a boyfriend? She asks. She moves her head so that it rests at the edge of the bed. I can smell her breath. I have no answer for her. I think of the only friend I have why is a boy, and poor Roger Carly, he simply doesn't measure up. Oh, no one yet, I say. Oh, you will, she says, and I wonder where her confidence comes from. I bent my head and peeked at the carpet. Now is the moment to ask her about the man. But I hesitate, and it is the hesitation I lose the momentum that would make the question easy and natural. What's it like outside? She asks. It's pretty bad, I say, looking up. You'll have to stay here. I wait for a protest and am heartened when none comes. You might have to stay here a couple of days, I say, tentatively. Oh, I can stay here a couple of days, she says. She brings her arms out from under the covers. I didn't mean to stay here at all. Where would you have gone? I ask. Oh, I have places, she says, vaguely. Through the shut door and from the bottom of the stairway, I can hear my father calling my name. I unfold my legs and stand up quickly. I don't want him to come upstairs and find me sitting beside Charlotte's bed in a darkened room. I have to go now, I say. He's calling me. He doesn't want you in here, she says. She props herself up on one elbow. Thank you for drying my jeans, she adds. You can come downstairs when you're ready, I say. I shouldn't have come here, she says, gazing at the dull threads of light around and shed at the window. I'm glad you did, I blurt out. What was it like, she asks, when you found her? I realize that I know something she doesn't, and the knowledge seems unearned. I hear my father call my name again. In a minute he will climb the stairs looking for me. She was a little messy, I say, but her eyes were amazing. She seemed so calm, like she was waiting for us. She had dark hair. A lot of babies have dark hair at first, Charlotte says. It falls out. I read about that. She was beautiful, I say. I brace myself for an animal moan, a cow lowing for its calf, a lioness searching for her cub, but when there is only silence, I leave the room.